This video will be pretty personal. Personal in the sense that I will lay out the plan for you in which I describe how I want to live in the future. Now, why would you be interested in any of this? Maybe you're thinking in a similar way. In that case, you might join the conversation, know that there are other people that think like you, exchange ideas, etc. And eventually we can all move to a better way of life. Maybe you want to live your life in a completely different manner than the one I will describe here. This video or series of videos can have a different significance for you then. Namely, sustainable living is the route from which I hope most of my programming and automation methods in the future will branch out. So if you have been following my work, you have seen that there are a lot of airports there, malls, although extremely complex puzzles that are very hard and fun to solve. Using our skills as programmers in the building industry for this kind of projects is sort of shame, and I want us to apply our efforts to develop methods that will help us live better and more fulfilled lives, and not necessarily make some countries and companies and people show off what they can do with their money. So from that point of view, you can learn about architecture and programming in this area. And how does this topic connect to architecture and programming? Well, as I said, it will be the philosophical basis for my future interest in developing algorithms, but you can be the judge of it at the end of the video and if that makes sense for you or not. So before I start, I will use the word work a lot. I usually use the word work in many different ways. If I say get to work, it usually just means get to whatever you enjoy doing, whatever excites you. But this time I will use it differently. Every time I say work, I will refer to it in this sense. Do what you would not necessarily do on your own if you weren't paid. Let me repeat that. Do what you would not necessarily do on your own if you weren't paid. This type of work is opposite of a hobby. This type of work is not something you do for fun. It's something you have to do to survive, but if it was your choice, you wouldn't necessarily do that. So, that being defined, let's move to the main subject. My goal is to live sustainably, which means not waste money on stupid things, work, in the definition I explained, for maximum 3 to 4 hours per day, have a sense of community and closeness to people, and spend most of my day in playing and doing creative endeavors. 2 short points. I'm still very far from this goal, and sharing this with the community is also a way of maybe making this goal more achievable. Second, I know this kind of life is possible because I have seen and met people that live like that. I will not address this way of life as a commune, and I don't want you to think I want to live in a commune, because the term is loaded with connotations and images that do not fit at all to the idea of a society I have in mind. Therefore, I shall refer to it just as SL, sustainable living, for now. The idea is not to create or build a place from scratch. It's possible, but the idea is to live sustainably, more relaxed and closer to nature within existing places. So, finding a cheap house in an existing village is, for example, a very logical option. Buying a plot there and building a house is even better if it pays off. Then we as architects can also exercise our creativity from scratch. Most of us cannot afford anything, so we rent. However, renting should be the least acceptable option, because the point of living sustainably from a personal perspective is to reduce costs of living to an absolute minimum without compromising the basic quality of life, and a fixed rent can conflict with that. That is also one of the reasons why I'm professionally exploring all different ways of building an optimal house for a relatively small amount of money that most people could afford. I think that in order to function properly, SL should optimally be relatively close to a larger city, up to 30 minutes by car or public transportation. Why? It's indisputable that many people will miss the occasional busyness of the city and that we will want to visit it often, sometimes multiple times per week. This is why a sensible distance is for some people needed. I could personally live very remotely, but I also think that I represent the minority in that manner. The idea of SL is maybe also doable within the urban area, but it loses the contact with nature, which is one of the main aspects of sustainable living, as you will see. The location has to be chosen based on nature, agricultural possibilities, natural beauty, etc. The price of the land and houses. The SL could be a part of a larger village, but the size of the village should be sensible. I will explain afterwards that the group of people has to be reasonably small to give you the feeling of a community. The sustainable living way of life does not assume any aspects of the standard notion of a commune and an egalitarian society. Although all hunter-gatherer societies were egalitarian in a basic communistic sense, people shared food and resources equally, that works only in very small groups and when people are not infected with today's abundance of stuff and advertising that influences us. So, to strive toward a commune where people will not want stuff like technology or clothes is, in my opinion, a bit naive. We cannot expect that easily from a 21st century person, so people's needs for high quality of life will vary a lot, and that's why the private property has to be a part of SL like it is in most societies in the world. The sharing and openness of resources will be only on the voluntary basis, but I think that's the best way to do it. Mutual buildings would be desirable. People could unite resources and buy or build land or buildings they could share. I have seen examples of this in Japan where different buildings like a library or theater are privately owned, but they're open and can be used by anyone. The result of this type of living should be that you have enough resources so that you will not need to work more than 3 hours per day. This will be one of the basic indicators of how successfully you implement the DSL. The free time can be then used for different activities. In my case, I would like to have more time for meditation, for example, at least half an hour per day, as practically all studies show the incredible positive effects on human happiness, mental and physical health. Unfortunately, a modern human does not have time for these kind of practices, and one of the goals of SL is to make time for that. Again, in my case, free time could leave room for playing a musical instrument, singing, composing, something music related for at least half an hour, 1 hour per day. Assuming, of course, there are people who do not find music or meditating to be enriching. In this way, they would be free to do whatever they want to do. But the point is that the free time would enable frequent gatherings, discussions, conversations, playing games, exchange of ideas, something that many of us are lacking. A modern forum that nowadays exists only on Reddit, WhatsApp, or in the YouTube comment section in a very pathetic form. I know that a normal reaction is, come on, you can meet friends and gather every day in the city as well. In theory, yes, but in practice no one does that and no one has the time. So you have to simultaneously free the time and have the physical closeness, and you would also have to give Netflix a rest from time to time, but I guess that would be your choice. The idea is to grow as much plant-based food as possible, hopefully covering your own needs and ideally other people's needs. So modern development in agriculture, like vertical farming, for example, enable cheap and automated production of food, and this should be used, researched, and improved. And this is one of the areas where automation and programming can have huge benefits, and something I'm willing to pursue. The stereotype of living in a commune or in the village is for many people that it is a hippie way of life. This usually evokes images of tense, barefoot people with dreads who shower once a week or once a month. Their houses are usually dusty and dirty, and it feels like we have a choice to live clean life in the city or a dirty life with animals in the village. In my opinion, this stereotype has to be broken because I do not like dirt, even though I grew up in the village. I'm convinced that the village life in 21st century can be as clean and as orderly as it gets. So another parting from the standard image of a commune is that SL can and should be modern, clean, and high-tech. I do not understand why the sustainable living close to nature is contradictory to using modern technology. For me, those two can easily go together. At the same time, using technology and automation is what should free humans from boring and repetitive work and not give them more of it, like we are witnessing every day. So all sustainable forms of energy should be used: solar panels, windmills, geothermal heating, ideally returning energy back into the system. I know a lot of examples in Germany where people produce more energy than they need with the solar panels, and they are actually returning it to the system. IoT, Internet of Things, smart houses. Yes, bring it on. This should not only be used but researched in order to share the knowledge and show others how sustainable architecture can make your life more affordable and comfortable, while caring for the nature at the same time. This type of life has to free up time for reading and researching new stuff. That is how progress will be made. You should be able to do this minimum 1 to 2 hours per day if you want to. I know I do. The free time should enable people to exercise if they want to, at least half an hour per day. Running in the nature, calisthenics, gym, but also group sports are desirable. Our hunter-gatherer DNA is used to at least 2 hours of movement a day, and if we want to live a healthy life, we should definitely have time to move more. The SL can refer not only to the way of life, but the way of creative endeavors as well. In order to detach from the urban environment, the necessary work that has to be done, as I mentioned, up to 3 to 4 hours per day, should try to be organized in following terms. First, as much of it as possible has to be done online. We all have to work on popularizing remote working more and more. If you work in a large company, convince your boss you can work from home or from a coffee shop. Develop methods of location-independent working. Prove that you are more efficient because you do not lose time on transportation, you help your environment, and you're happier to work in the environment of your choosing. Second, we have to connect the dots. In the SL community, we can find each person's strengths and weaknesses and use them to organize projects that will be a collaborative work. This should be more efficient than individual work and will help the cohesion of the group. Everyone has usable skills that can be helpful, we just need to find them. Agricultural society is only 10,000 years old, not old enough to make substantial genetic differences, and most of our genes were baked in the hundreds of thousands of years of hunter-gatherer way of life. Most of psychological research shows that original hunter-gatherer society was much happier than today's societies. 99.9% of the human experience was lived in a hunter-gatherer context. Most of the selection pressures that have sculpted and shaped our genomes are really well adapted for that environment and that lifestyle, Stephen Iliardi writes. For people interested in this subject, I will recommend some books in the description below, but the sense of belonging and sharing is known to increase happiness. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors spent all day, every day in the company of their loved ones. The main reasons for depression in modern cities is the separation and the fact that people are evolved to handle groups of maximum 150 people that they know. It may sound contradictory at this point, but the point of SL is not to separate yourself from the world. And the point is also not to shy away from making money. The point is to be happy on a daily basis, not to hurt others and make them unhappy, and not to destroy yours and other people's environment in the process. The point is to live closer to nature, feel the autonomy of working with your own hands, getting credit for your work, live within a community of people that you know, meet on a regular basis, daily, play games, share experiences, and work on creative projects together. Traveling is one of the greatest joys of life, and for traveling you need money, so through the development of online businesses, including all other ideas of earning from agriculture, etc., the maximizing of profit is by no means excluded. But if you're doing that, you have no time to socialize, meditate, play music, play games, exercise regularly, all the things that make life happy and enjoyable, then what the fuck do you need money for? If you're the person that is prepared to work 12 hours per day, go on vacations just a few weeks per year, and then have enough money just to spend on some petty material stuff like a car or clothes or iPhone, I don't know, and that makes you happy, then good for you. I'm honestly happy for you, and I honestly envy you, without any sarcasm, because this world that we are living in today is designed perfectly for you. But that does not make me happy. Applying for vacation is for me one of those sentences that make my skin crawl, as much as the image of a person taking a smoking break in front of a building in a corner on a dirty city street, knowing they cannot just walk away but have to go back to their cell until they do their time for the day. SL does not imply a small life. Listen, I honestly want to change the world, but I realize that if I want to do that, I have to step out of the hamster wheel, because you cannot do anything from within it. Why? Because you do not have the time. I work, in the sense I explained, less hours than almost anyone I know, and I still by far do not have the time to do all the things I would like to do. By freeing up time, I could do things that no one would pay for now, but could potentially be great for humanity. I'll give you some examples. Let's say research on how automation and algorithms can be applied for energy efficient housing while implementing them and learning from experience. Research how smart house technologies can be implemented for micro-agriculture, vertical farming, so that every person can grow their own food. Research the best ways to be a digital nomad, work remotely and work online. What can you do? How much can you earn? How to develop satellite offices in the fields they do not work at the moment, like architecture, for example. Research how to use virtual reality, especially in a way that helps people in need, like for therapy example, and all in the anticipation that 5 to 10 years from now the quality of VR will be practically as realistic as it gets. Putting a VR set on will be like watching a video, and if you put a VR set on and suddenly find yourself on the top of the mountain, does this help? How does it feel? Can we work in VR from our chair in the SL community? Research on how to empower others to make a step toward decentralization in physical and economic sense. The ideas on how to help the world by getting rid of the huge inequality of income. This all takes time. I want to work on all these ideas, but I can't because my fixed costs are too large, like yours. And I have to work at least 50 hours a week just to pay the bills. And all of these ideas that I mentioned are not just for fun, they're all marketable, but you cannot develop them while you work 10 hours per day or even 6 hours per day in a job that doesn't help you grow, doesn't make you happy, and makes you just wanting to get home and turn on entertainment for a couple of hours. And if there are some ideas that you would like to work on, some projects that you would like to develop that make you excited and happy, that's all that matters. Life is very short. Again, just to have a sensible thread, what does this have to do with architecture and programming? Well, I mentioned in some videos before that I will try to concentrate more and more on sustainable and cheap architecture with my algorithm development, and try to concentrate on online teaching and online cooperation. So by making the way of life I described above a reality, basically. I would try to free up time so that I can do enough research on the subject of remote working, building and optimizing your habitat and food production, and then try to help and inspire others not only ideologically, but offering them concrete tools and solutions. But in order to do that, I need to free up time. In order to free up time, I need to create the SL conditions that I describe. So you see what's happening? You cannot do it gradually. That's what's scary. You are inside this skipping rope game, and you're doing it, and you're doing it, and you're afraid that if you step out and try to do something new, someone else will take your place. And that's what everyone does around you, so you do it too. I do it as well. We all have to skip rope for living. Well, what if we don't?